3, 2, wait. Chair's uncomfortable right now for some reason. All right, there we go. 3, 2, 1. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Wolfcrier here, and welcome to my review for Warhammer Chaosbane, the latest action role-playing game published by Big Ben Interactive and developed by Echo Software. Alright, so let's jump right in. My expectations going into purchasing this game and reading about the game, seeing the videos that they put up and all of that, was very high. My expectations for this game were probably unrealistically high to begin with. But this is a game that has the entirety of the Warhammer universe, the fantasy portion of the Warhammer universe, at its disposal. All of those creatures and monsters and that epic lore that Warhammer itself contains was available for this game. Now, I'm not sure how much of those items were licensed to Echo Software with the creation of this game, but I'm pretty sure they had a decent amount of stuff that they could use in this game. And even if they didn't, some of the stuff that they could have manufactured for the game could have brought this game to a higher level, if you will. This is not a finished game, ladies and gentlemen. It is not done. There's no way this game is a completed game. Now, we are going to be talking about the pros and the cons. We'll start off with that. Pros. Combat feels good, mostly. There are a few hiccups here and there, but combat overall feels pretty fun. It's really fun on the Dwarven Slayer to be able to whirlwind through your enemies, but the problem is, and one of the biggest cons, is that the skills need more balancing, and there definitely needs to be more variety in the skills. I found myself very limited in the skills for my dwarf, and this is something that they actually touted to be the opposite when they were promoting this game, that so many skills available to every character. That is simply not the case in this game. Another pro is the difficulty settings make the game really accessible and challenging. But the con of that is the game tends to be really easy overall and ramps up too fast at times. For instance, Act 3 somehow was way harder than Act 4 and amped up to a bigger extent between Act 1 and 2, and then 2 to 3 became near impossible, and then 4 settled back to where Act 2 was. Overall level design is pretty decent. It doesn't take away from the action, but it's nice and pleasing to the eyes. But there's only 4 tile sets. There are only 4 maps in this entire game. Each act is a completely different map, and you go into that map several times until you get to the boss. There's not any variation other than that. To put it this way, in Path of Exile, Grim Dawn, or Diablo 3, you can play about 1 to 2 hours and get double the content that Warhammer Chaosbane has. Double the content in about 1 to 2 hours of playing each of those games individually. And for $50, you can buy all of those games. Path of Exile is free, for instance. $40, you get Diablo 3, you get Reaper of Souls, and you get the Necromancer. For less than $50, you get Grim Dawn and both expansions, and all of which offer more than Warhammer in less time. The base game for Grim Dawn and Diablo 3 offers more content than this $50 game. And for $20 more, you can get a slightly better, but still not as good as it should be, action role-playing game. With a $70 price tag, this would mean that it would cost more than just about any other action role-playing game out there, including expansions and DLC, and still not be comparable to more than 3 hours of playtime of any of those games available to you. Now, the 4 characters that are available to you in this game all have their own distinctive style and skill set, and that's pretty cool, but there are only 4 characters available, which also limits your playstyles in general, because The skills that they offer are not actually skills, but variations of existing skills that you can use. So there's only really 9 or 10 active abilities per class, and most of which are pretty useless. And you'll settle in on, for me, it's the dwarf. I play a lot of Whirlwind because that is the best skill available to the dwarf, at least at the current point that I am in playing. I did wait to do this review until I got to Endgame and was able to access every single Endgame portion of this. And I wanted to make sure that I was competent enough in the game itself to be able to give this review. I know we're bouncing a lot around during this video, but it bothers me. The fact that this game is this price and is this content is really telling of the company itself. Now, the boss fights in this game are very interesting. They are mechanic heavy, so you got to learn the mechanics of the fight. Once you do have the fights down, it's pretty easy, and there are still only 4 bosses. And there are very few limited and reskinned mini-bosses with pretty much the same abilities, so there's not much variety when it comes to boss killing or mini-boss killing. Simply because there's only 4 acts, there's 4 bosses, and a whole bunch of mini-bosses that are all pretty much the same as each other, just either reskins or slightly different color variations of their skills, and that sort of thing. This game does have Warhammer enemies, and that's pretty awesome to see. The Warhammer enemies come to life, especially the fantasy versions. I've always been into fantasy type of action role-playing games, but the problem is there are so many limited amount of enemies, and most of them are reskins, and they have very few mechanical differences. A lot of times it's just a different color variation or a different variation of a creature with the same mechanics. There's not a lot of content as far as enemies go in this game either. And loot in this game is rather dull, uninteresting, and boring for the most part. Yes, you can get sets later on as you reach level cap and you get going into the endgame content. You can achieve set pieces and build up a set, and that's going to change up your character a little bit with its skills and the way combat flows for you. But for the most part, loot is very, very uninteresting. There's only a few different stat differences between the two. You can get an upgraded version of the same heroic piece of gear, but for the most part, that's it. There's very few loot options available to you. There's very few builds available to you as far as the heroic sets, and it just, I don't know with this game. The other huge problem, and my number one problem with this game, is it is a pay-to-win money grab game. Not only do you get, extra gold and extra experience for that $20 more for the season pass, but you are also able to buy gold boosts. You are able to buy fragment boosts on Steam, and the season pass offers you even more of that with a new god skill tree. So now for $20 more, you can actually possibly get some more skills. With the $20, you also get new main story quest line that's coming, but this wasn't even something that was being worked on before the pricing went into effect. So you've actually created a pricing scheme, if you will, for this game before actually creating the content. You don't know how much that content's going to cost to make, etc., but you've decided in advance of releasing your $10 game for $50 that you could charge $20 more for content you haven't even thought of yet. Ladies and gentlemen, this game is pretty much the reason gamers in general get so upset with the way the gaming industry and developers are treating their consumers. This game is not worth $70. It is not worth $50. It is not worth $20 right now. Literally in Diablo 3, you can run 5 greater rifts and get more content. Literally in Path of Exile, you can play Act 1 and have more content. Literally in Grim Dawn, you can pretty much load up the game and have more content. It's just ridiculous that this would be pushed at this price tag and be touted by the company as an upcoming great action role-playing game when it doesn't actually hold any of the qualities of a decent action role-playing game. The loot is trash. There's 4 tile sets, 4 bosses. There's like 3 mini-bosses that get reskinned and reused everywhere. The Endgame System is absolutely ridiculous because there are 3 or 4 Endgame systems, and I've played them all, and I've played them on many different difficulties, but it feels the same. There's no difference. If you do an invasion, if you do a relic map, if you do any of them other than the boss mode, they all feel exactly identical. There is no difference in feeling once you're into Endgame. It's all rinse and repeat. It's like doing the same thing over and over and over. There is zero difference between the Endgame systems with the exception of the boss run. But there's only 4 bosses. How long can that go on? Now, I'm a Diablo 3 player and a Path of Exile player, and I've played Grim Dawn, and I'm really looking forward to other action role-playing games that are coming out, like Last Epoch, possibly Pagan Online, Torchlight Frontiers, all that stuff. And I know that Diablo 3 is probably the weakest as far as content goes, but Diablo 3 has way more content than Warhammer Chaosbane. And to me, it's just pretty telling of what the company wants out of this game. They did not want to create a great game. They wanted to create a big funnel that would suck money down to everybody involved. There is nothing in this game that is actually redeeming, unfortunately, other than the combat, like I said, is pretty decent for the most part. But the storyline, you've got Act 1 and Act 2 are pretty decent with the storyline. But Act 3 and 4, it just starts progressively falling off to the point where you just want to skip through and get to the end game and see if that's any better. And unfortunately, they try to, shock you with a lot of the different twists and turns in the stories, but they reuse the same aspects of storytelling in every single act for the most part. A surprise, this one's the bad guy. And overall, it just doesn't flow well. Not only that, but sometimes the voice acting doesn't actually match up with the dialogue box. And we're talking in Act 2. You're telling me none of the developers played through Act 2 to realize that this stuff wasn't matching up? That it wasn't matching up to where it was actually said and fixed it? How big of a problem would it have been to actually fix the dialogue in this game to match up with what was written on the screen? They're out of order. It just becomes one big giant mess once you reach Act 2 as far as the storyline goes. Overall, like I said, I liked Act 1 and Act 2 with their storyline. It kept me going long enough to get to Act 3. About a quarter of the way into this Act 3, I just wanted it over and done with. I wanted to get to the end of the game so that I could do this review, so that I could be done playing this game. And that is unfortunate, ladies and gentlemen. That is not something I was expecting out of this game. It was definitely not something that I thought this developer would be going towards. And personally, I just don't see any redeeming qualities at this point in time for you to spend your hard-earned money on a game that is going to frustrate you within 4 hours of playing it. Because there is absolutely nothing to do in this game once you get to Endgame, other than the same thing you did all the way until you reached Endgame. All right, ladies and gentlemen, sucks that we had to take it to such a negative route, but I'm not happy with this game. I'm not happy with the marketing of this game. I'm not happy with the development of this game. I'm not happy with people wasting resources and wasting gamers' time and money just trying to suck all the money they can out of people. It's absolute trash, ladies and gentlemen. All right, thank you so very much for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. I always greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and let me know in that comment section down below your thoughts on this video and Warhammer Chaosbane. Maybe there's something I'm missing, but I truly doubt it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again, and you all have a fantastic day. Peace.